This is an ad by BetterHelp. BetterHelp recently surveyed over 16,000 people and found that while 75% of people believe it's wise to seek support, only 27% of Americans are in therapy, and people stay silent to avoid being judged. BetterHelp has over 10 years of experience matching you with the right therapist. Because we're all better with help. Visit betterhelp.com/stopthestigma for their first ever State of Stigma report, the latest in mental health research.
Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed at home with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 2 million families who've chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast. Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed at home with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 2 million families who've chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.
You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Citizen Detective, and Campus Killings. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances, and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to search for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing.
This is part 2 of our coverage of the Maura Murray case. In this episode, you'll hear from Maura's sister Julie, who's been a tremendous advocate for her sister's case, and for other families who have gone through similar experiences. Not only does she help walk us through Maura's case, but because the case is so well known and featured on so many podcasts, TV shows, and online forums, we felt it was important to have Julie herself set the record straight on some things and help clear up inaccuracies or untruths that are out there about Maura's case. Hi, Julie, and thank you for coming on Missing Persons to talk about your sister Maura's case with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. Maura's case obviously has gotten a lot of attention over the years, and with that attention can sometimes come things maybe that are not accurate or things that need to be clarified. So, and that's our main reason in having you here today, is to do some of that. I want to talk a little bit about your advocacy of the case. Your family's sort of been front and center in keeping Maura's case out there. How hard has that been to do, to sort of keep going out there and reliving this and going through this all these years, trying to, balance getting the word out there, but also doing all the things that you have to do in your everyday lives?
It's very challenging. And, when my sister Maura first went missing, that was in 2004. So it isn't like it is today where you have just constant 24/7 social media. I mean, Facebook launched the week that Maura disappeared, and the term podcast was first used 2 days after Maura disappeared. So it's been an evolution in terms of the technology that we have now and social media. So in the beginning, back in 2004, it was more boots on the ground, traveling up to New Hampshire where she went missing, talking to locals, talking to reporters in person, talking to witnesses, searching, things like that. And over time, as you know, the true crime space has evolved. And so now it's just a constant. And that's been a double-edged sword, because with the constant social media, we're getting awareness out and we're reaching way more people than we were ever able to do before social media. But also it can consume you, and it has consumed portions of my life. And, there'll be days where I'm trying to do my full-time job, but I'm also trying to answer emails, have calls with investigators, do interviews, podcasts. It's it's a lot. So I've learned to balance having to, fulfill my personal obligations and continue to, be a good employee at my full-time job, as well as doing what I need to do to keep Maura's case out there in the public consciousness, because cold cases need awareness. And if you're not talking about it, the fear is that people will forget about her.
And you brought up some good points. You really painted a picture by saying that Facebook had just come out when she disappeared, and podcast was like a brand new term. So it really demonstrates just how old Maura's case is, that it's been that long. And some of the things I want to run through are just some of the things that we noticed. They're things that maybe weren't clear or sort of maybe inaccurate. So I just want to randomly go through different points with you and let you clarify the best you can what's accurate, what's not. And the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was, obviously being Maura's sister, you having an inside family connection with her. What was her true state of mind, as best as you can tell, leading up to when she went missing? And do you think she was going through something personal, as far as whatever you would call it, a crisis, a struggle?
Well, I definitely think something wasn't right. I just don't know. And even after all these years, I don't know exactly what that was. So we have to remember, Maura was 21 years old when she went missing, college student. She was in a on again, off again, long distance relationship. And she was in a very competitive nursing program at the University of Massachusetts. So when I talk to people about her state of mind, I try to bring them back to when they were 21, and how just everyday stressors in our lives now as adults, older adults, when you're in your early 20s, 21, those daily stressors are magnified because you don't have the bigger view of the world. So a problem with a boyfriend, that's magnified in the mind of a 21-year-old. And, when I last saw Maura, it was the Christmas before she disappeared. So a month, she disappeared in February. So I saw her in December into January. And she seemed like her regular self. She seemed like she was happy in the nursing program. She didn't confide in me in any emotional struggles that she was going through, other than the typical 21-year-old things that stress you out, like schoolwork and boyfriends and things like that. So when I got the call that she was missing, it came as a complete shock to me because I didn't see any indications leading up to it.
Yeah. And that time frame too, of when you saw her, that's a time where someone that is struggling or maybe has depression, not that Maura had that, but that's a time of year when a lot of that stuff can be compounded, the holidays. And that is the time where you last saw her. So maybe, something happened along those lines into the new year there. One thing I wanted to touch on too was, it was reported that some of Maura's internet searches on the night before she vanished reportedly included excessive alcohol impact, consumption on an unborn baby. There was discussion of birth control pills, that kind of thing. And I don't know if that's led to speculation that Maura may have been pregnant, but there's also been, reported that she was researching that stuff in relation to her nursing. Can you clarify a little bit about that? Some of those searches that were revealed?
Yes. So Maura was studying, she was in a clinical course, a maternity course, and the assignment that she had was to look up specific maternity terms. And she had a group of several other students who split up the terms, and they each took a grouping of terms and they defined them, and then they emailed them to each other so they all didn't have to do all the definitions. And so that is what Maura was doing. She was doing her actual homework assignment. And I have a copy of the email that she sent to her nursing school classmates, and it's defining things like Braxton Hicks and things like that. Nowhere in her homework assignment was there excessive alcohol and pregnant. That I don't really know where that came from because I haven't seen that. So that's one of the things that kind of has been sensationalized, because that was her assignment and she submitted her assignment, and people have concluded that meant she was pregnant, but there was no indications to me. There's no evidence to point to that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, like in a big case like this, sort of it gets put under a microscope. People start looking at things, and then, a second, third generation telling of it, all of a sudden there's little details that aren't true. This search that she did, to someone that was just looking in at the search, not really having any reference, it might lead them to believe that maybe she was pregnant and upset, depressed, whatever. But it seems like this was definitely something that's related to the work she was doing in school. So that seems to lend itself to her wanting to do what she normally did, her work, her studies, and she was just basically working on that. It was nothing nefarious there.
Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, and Maura's been missing for 19 years now, so everyone wants to solve this mystery. So, I believe there's value in dissecting these details, but there's no evidence of it meaning that she was pregnant.
And now a word on behalf of our sponsor, BetterHelp. And thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode of Missing Persons. As an established podcast host and producer, I've had to lead a busy life, juggling work, kids, bills, and everything else life can throw at you. And sometimes along the way, there's no doubt I wish I had help and support. And I'm sure that many of you listening have had a similar experience. You've probably been exactly where I was. We all need help sometimes. When things seem to be piling on, maybe you're considering a career change, or you've gone through a breakup, whatever's put pressure on you, it would be nice to be able to have someone to talk to that can help you navigate the course and find the best way forward. BetterHelp Online Therapy can help you navigate the way. BetterHelp Online Therapy is here to help you on that journey, and their trained experts can offer support and advice that can help you with your specific issues. If you're thinking about starting online therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Your BetterHelp experience will be entirely online, designed to be there around your schedule and at your convenience. The best part is that getting started with BetterHelp is so easy. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you'll be on your way. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/MP today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/MP to get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp.
Aetna has over 1.6 million care providers, so whether you need a urologist, dermatologist, or otolaryngologist, our team's got you covered. Because healthier happens together. For all your healthcare moments, choose Aetna. Learn more at aetna.com/moments.
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, whenever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members only pay a $25 copay or less. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off of your first month when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Talkspace.com.
Now, you mentioned her long-distance relationship as with Billy Rausch, and I was curious if it was accurate that there was a note left for Billy on top of Maura's things in her dorm room, if that was something that was accurate. And if so, was there anything, enlightening in that letter?
Yeah, it was totally inaccurate and misrepresented. It wasn't a note from Maura at all. It was a 2-year-old email that her boyfriend at the time sent to her, and he was talking about some infidelity, some struggles in the relationship. And it was printed out, and it was made to seem like it was put out on top of some boxes. It was actually inside a basketball program in the box. So it's really a stretch to, number one, call it a personal note, because it wasn't even from Maura. And then to kind of insinuate that it was the reason why she disappeared. I mean, it could have influenced her decision to leave. We still don't know why she left, but it certainly wasn't the way it was characterized as a personal note left outside on top of her boxes. And the police put that out publicly, and my family explained to them that was inaccurate, and they did not ever correct that. And so that's another piece of misinformation that's just been mischaracterized.
And that's why it's great to have you on to sort of clear some of these things up and get them, sort of straightened out, some of the things that have gone around in the case. And you mentioned sort of her relationship with Billy and infidelity, that kind of stuff. One of the things that was reported was that Maura was having an affair or some kind of relationship with her track coach. Is that accurate?
Well, the number one thing is the term affair, it's not applicable in this situation because Maura was not married. The assistant graduate track coach was another unmarried young man. So to call it an affair is to just kind of evoke a certain emotion. It was a fling. And it was during a break when Maura and her boyfriend, Bill, were, on again, off again. I don't know, what the exact details were, but, she did have a relationship with a graduate assistant.
Okay. And as you mentioned there, it's not like she was married, he was married. So to clarify, it's not really an affair. Along those lines, were the people in Maura's life that she had some kind of relationships with Billy, her track coach. Were they all cooperative as far as you believe, to the fullest extent?
I'm not sure about the track coach. I've actually tried to reach out to him multiple times, but I haven't gotten a response. I did speak to investigators and inquired about, what they investigated, if at all. And they told me that they had spoken to him at one point. I'm not sure why he wouldn't speak to my family. I would just be speculating on that. But in terms of Bill and his family, they've been very cooperative in the investigation and have answered, any questions that we had.
And one of the other things that was reported was regarding some cell phone activity. It was reported that the last activity on Maura's cell phone was around 5 p.m. when someone called her. It was a cell phone ping confirming that call from within 20 miles of Londonderry, New Hampshire, which is a town north of New Hampshire, Massachusetts border. Is that accurate? And if so, do you know who called her? Is there anything more there as far as that last call, last activity?
It is accurate. It's Londonderry with a D. And it's how you would get from Boston on the eastern side of Massachusetts up to New Hampshire. And it's a road that's how my family got up to New Hampshire. There was a ping to her cell phone in the afternoon, the day she went missing. And we know this because a affidavit was misfiled in another case file, and it came to light that way. And the investigator was trying to subpoena the cell phone records to identify the caller. I don't know if the police have ever identified that caller. I know that my family has not. We still do not know who was trying to call Maura. I'm very interested in who that was, because that could give us some sort of indication. It could just also be nothing. And that's the thing with my sister's case. Everything could be as equally as important as it is insignificant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's frustrating because you don't know what clue might make the difference in finding out what happened to her, and which one was just a friend calling to say hi or something like that.
Exactly. But what troubles me about that call is, Maura's case is very well publicized. It's constantly in the media. And that's not by accident. That's because that's what I believe is going to help solve it one day, is to keep her in the media. But it's troubling to me that with all the publicity, whoever that caller was has never come forward, at least to my family. I'm not sure if they came forward to law enforcement. So that's always kind of puzzled me.
Yeah, just to say, hey, it was me, and I called her because of this reason, but for them not to come forward does seem a little suspicious there.
Yeah.
I want to turn to some of the evidence that was found in Maura's car. It was reported that there was some wine in there, but there was also reportedly a beer bottle found in her car. What do you think happened to the other bottles that she purchased? It seems like they should have been there too, but they weren't. Is it possible you think that she packed them in a backpack or something, and when she departed the car, she took them? What's your thinking on this?
I do think that's possible. So for those that don't know, Maura stopped at a liquor store before she disappeared. And we know that because the receipt was found inside her abandoned car. And some of the alcohol that she purchased was found in her abandoned car after she disappeared. However, some was missing. And that's another thing that's perplexing to me, because it doesn't make sense for her to take bottles of alcohol with her if she's trying to flee the scene. That would weigh her down, slow her down tremendously. So I'm not sure whether she took them. They were in the backpack and she grabbed the backpack. We know that she had a backpack and it's never been found. But I'm not sure whether somebody else took them. I just don't know.
Yeah, and that is one of those things that sort of leads to speculation. Could there have been other people that were drinking these, and therefore there's other people that might be out there that might have answers that aren't coming forward? Just another frustrating thing. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things as far as newer developments in the case. There was a mention of a 2022 FBI VICAP profile for Maura. What is the significance of that 2022 FBI profile?
It's hugely significant because the VICAP program is usually reserved for homicides, unsolved murders. There are some missing people that are included in VICAP. And just to understand, VICAP is essentially a database that the FBI uses so that they can compile missing and murdered people's information so that people in other jurisdictions outside of New Hampshire can cross-reference case information. Because if it's not in this VICAP program, it's hard for these different departments to communicate when information is found. So what the VICAP repository does is allows an investigator to go in and put in some data that they have and see if it will ping against any of these other open cases. So my family was ecstatic that Maura was finally included in this because it just gave us hope that if some evidence was found outside of New Hampshire, that the investigators would at least be able to find it. And it did take over 15 years to get her included, but we're happy that she was finally included in it.
Yeah, and that's a big development, a big tool for a case like this. So hopefully that will help it in some way. And along the lines of new things that have developed, there were some testing that was done supposedly on stained carpet from the A-frame house where the dogs allegedly hit in that area. Can you talk a little bit about that and what, if anything, was found in that testing?
Well, that's an interesting question because it's true. It's not alleged that dogs alerted in that property. I've seen them alert multiple different dogs. But early on in the investigation, a couple of years in, a team of private independent investigators got access to the property and they found a discolored piece of carpet. They cut that carpet out. There was some miscommunication in getting it to the right people. When it finally got to New Hampshire State Police, they acknowledged receipt of it, but they never acknowledged the results of the testing. And so I sit here with you today, still 19 years later, not knowing the results of that testing. So that is incredibly frustrating for my family. There was also related to that property, the renter at the time's brother contacted my father, and this was about a year into the investigation, and implicated his brother in Maura's disappearance and provided him with a rusty knife. And so my family turned that rusty knife over to the state police for testing, and we just confirmed that within the last year that yes, that had been tested. And so I have to assume that it was negative. I do know that it was tested. I don't know the results of that test, but in terms of the carpet, it's still a question mark. And that's actually one of the questions that I have on repeat when I meet with the investigator. What's the deal with the carpet? And if you haven't tested it, my family is more than willing to pay for testing at some of these newer labs that have better technology. And we've tested other things before recently, within the last year, in coordination with New Hampshire State Police, my family funded testing through thru labs for another sample. So, my family's pushing for anything. And even if it had been tested, we would like to get it tested again with the newer technology. And like I said, my family is willing to pay for all of that.
And along these lines, over the years, there's been different things. I don't want to call them breaks, but different bits of news, different potential leads. How frustrating is it to have these come up every so often? Does it give you hope only for that hope to be dashed when at the end of the day, the case still isn't solved?
Yeah, it's like riding a hope roller coaster. When we get these tips and leads in, we're at the top of the hope roller coaster and we're thinking to ourselves, this is it. Yep, we finally got something. We've got an answer. This has got to be it. And then only for us to take the hope roller coaster all the way back down to the bottom. And then it's emotional to have to go through that oscillation all the time. And over the past 19 years, that's kind of what it feels like. It's the ups and downs. But the trick is you never want to allow yourself to get too hopeful, because the crash is so hard and it's hard to get out of that crash. And so if you kind of try to maintain your emotions and your composure when these things come up, you're able to continue on, because this is a long game. 19 years is a long time. And so we've learned that it's dangerous to get your hopes up too high.
Well, with all the news, the shows, podcasts, everything else under the sun that's been done, and trying to shed light on Maura's case, trying to figure out what happened to her. Sometimes there's been things, as we mentioned, that come out that are not accurate, that are not complete, that maybe don't reflect the way they should. With all of that, are there any things that you'd like to clear up and set the record straight on? Anything related to the case or to your family, things that are out there that need to be clarified?
Well, I think my family has certainly taken our fair share of unfair blows, in terms of our reactions, in terms of our decisions. But what I would tell you is you don't really know how you're going to react to certain things until you're in it. And of course, we've made mistakes. I've said things that I regret. I've trusted people that I shouldn't have. The whole host of mistakes have been made, but that's how you learn. And I think that since Maura's case is so public, every little move we make, every word I say is just completely dissected. And it's kind of unfair because, I'm not a professional at being a missing sister. I'm trying to find Maura, and I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. And people have called my family suspicious and that we're hiding something, or that we helped Maura escape. Just it's ridiculous, some of the things that are said about us, or that we're liars, or we're evil and dark. And it's just totally unfair because it's not true. We're just a regular family thrown into a real life tragedy, trying to do our best. And have we made mistakes? Of course we have. Have we tried to learn and get better and grow and do things better? Of course we have. So that's one of the things, one of the negative sides of having such a high profile case is that everything you do is going to be looked at, with a suspicious eye. And sometimes, like I said, it's just is what it is. There's no hidden meaning behind any of this. Our goal is to find Maura, and that's something it's sad to have to go through life, 19 years now without my best friend, my sister, and to also have to fight people about everything I say or do.
For anyone out there that's looking to really...
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, whenever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members only pay a $25 copay or less. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off of your first month when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Talkspace.com.
Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed at home with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 2 million families who've chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Dive into Maura's case and really learn about it and take it in and sort of examine everything there is to know in the case. We want to direct people to your family's website, obviously, but are there any other good resources you'd recommend for people to go to that you think has the most accurate and complete information for someone that's interested in Maura's case?
Well, I think that two parts to that. I think the most important thing that people need to realize when looking into Maura's case is Maura and my family are real humans. We're not these characters in a screenplay. We're not, we're not here for entertainment. We're real humans suffering. And people a lot of times overlook that. And that allows for this sensationalized, speculative, exploitative coverage of Maura's case because you're not understanding that Maura was a human being. That's the most important thing. To find out more about my sister, you should come to the people that knew her. And that's why I always say yes to things like this, is because no one knew Maura better than my family. I shared a room with Maura growing up. We did everything together. So I can tell you about who she was as a human. And I think that's super important in the coverage. I think that some of the coverage is not victim-centered, and that's doing a disservice to Maura, because Maura is judged for some poor decisions that she made as a 21-year-old. And people forget that Maura was much more than just those poor decisions that she made. She was a complete human, a flawed human. And people lose sight of, the holistic picture of her. In terms of where to go to find information, the family website is a great resource. It's mauramurraymissing.org. I'm always available. I'm not hard to find. I'm all over social media if people have specific questions. But there's a group of advocates that volunteer their time and help search. And talk about Maura on different groups online. And you can tell pretty quickly who's victim-centered and who is in this for the right reasons. And the right reasons are to find this missing woman. There are some people that cover the story that just seem to want content. And like I said, I sound like a broken record, but we're more than just content here. This is a missing woman that we're trying to find, and I miss dearly every day.
Yeah. And that's something not to lose focus on, is the fact that you just want to know what happened to your sister after all this time. I want to ask you sort of just as far as what still can be done, what hasn't been done. Is there anything in all these years that have gone by that still hasn't been done that you and your family want to see done, and anything that's planned on being done in maybe the upcoming months or the upcoming year that you mentioned searches that get done periodically, things like that. What else is being done, and what else still needs to be done?
Well, a lot still needs to be done. Obviously, we still don't have a whole lot of answers, and it's been 19 years, and people's memories are fading. So one of the things that I say, and what I led with, is awareness is key in these unsolved cases, and to keep the victims in the public consciousness is the number one thing that we need to do, so that Maura doesn't become a file in a cabinet collecting dust. That's the worst possible scenario. My family has enlisted the help of different advocates. Like I said, we have a much better relationship with the investigators up in New Hampshire. I share information. I share tips and leads with them. We also do, we've paid for lab testing. We've paid for cadaver dogs. We constantly get tips and leads in. My inbox is always flooded with tips and leads, and I truly appreciate that. And it gives us something to focus on. So even though the case is so old, it still feels like there's always a to-do list. And so we just recently did a search of an area of interest with a cadaver dog. It didn't come up with anything, but it's one thing that we can not fully cross off the list, because we can't cross anything off the list until we find Maura, but it allows us to shift our resources to the next lead. And so that's been super helpful. So it seems to me that, I constantly have something to do, somebody to talk to. And that's obviously given my family hope. And one of the more recent things that's happening is I connected with other families of the missing and murdered in New Hampshire. And we're actually having an advocacy event in August to try to continue to raise awareness and meet with the Attorney General of New Hampshire. Because there's some things that we'd like to see improvements on. And number one is the communication between the investigators and the families. Sometimes our inquiries go unanswered or completely ignored. The New Hampshire has a state-run victim advocacy program that we as the families of the missing and murdered feel is ineffective. Would like to see some reform there. But ultimately, having that coalition, if you will, of other families gives us the connection and a shoulder to lean on and people to bounce ideas off of that know exactly how I feel. And that's been super empowering. And we're hoping to continue to do different advocacy efforts so that all of these victims, there's 130 plus victims in New Hampshire that are unsolved. And, Maura does get a ton of publicity. But that's because I have the bandwidth to do it. And some of these other families don't. And so, I'm trying to help as many other families as I can. And I do believe that there is strength in numbers. And so that's kind of the latest thing on the agenda right now.
Well, it's admirable to see so often in cases like this, families like yours are going through this terrible thing, but then they somehow, pivot to help other people, with their experience. You mentioned the having a team of several families that can help each other, support each other, offer each other advice, and just be there to support each other. That's invaluable. And that's always something that blows me away when I see that in these kinds of cases.
Yeah, it's the best thing, because a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, I isolate. I feel like nobody understands. I don't want to trauma dump on my friends and constantly be talking about how, everything is terrible. But I can do that with these other families, and it's just an instant connection, and the rapport is just almost instantaneous because we get it. We've been there. And it's powerful, because to be able to connect with people who get it is kind of rare. But I'm so thankful that I do have this group to rely on, to lean on.
Well, and one final question I have before we wrap up, I just wanted to see if you had your own personal theory based on everything but based on, knowing your sister as well as you do. Do you have a theory as to what happened to her that you think is the most likely outcome in this case that you want to talk about?
Well, I think at this point, I've changed over the years, but at this point, knowing what I know, I believe that she was met with foul play. And I believe that for a number of reasons. One, her body has never been found. No items or belongings have ever been found. No cell phone activity, bank activity, nothing has ever been found. As well as there's been no credible sightings. So we do get sightings in, especially after Maura's in the news. The emails pile into my inbox and go to the investigators about, people seeing Maura, but none of those have ever panned out. So that leads me to believe that, she didn't walk into the woods, because we would have found something by now, because we've covered that area and expanded out into different areas. I mean, we even were looking in Massachusetts recently. So that just leads me to believe that she is probably no longer with us, and it was foul play.
And maybe not without saying a name or, pointing suspicion towards one person or anything like that. But where do you think that foul play, what form do you believe that might have been in? Would that be a local resident that just happened to be there when she was vulnerable? Would this been somebody that she knew from her everyday life that was supposed to be there to help her? Where do you think that foul play might have come from?
It's hard to answer that, because, I don't know what I don't know, and the investigators haven't shared too much with me. But what I do know is that Maura was in a very vulnerable situation. She was alone. We have to assume that she was alone in a very dark area. It's not as remote as most people think. There were a number of houses around, but there was no cell service. So here she is at 7:30 p.m. in the middle of New Hampshire in February with no communication. And, I've mapped it out. I've driven it. The closest place where she could even get signal, because she did have a cell phone, was 3 miles back the way that we believe she came from the west, and then about 11 miles east. And in those conditions, that would have been hard, even for someone as in shape as Maura. Maura was a runner and in great shape, but no, she was vulnerable. So I think that somebody took advantage of that vulnerability. And part of me believes it was somebody that was an opportunistic person, and saw that. But I don't have any evidence to support somebody being with her that she knew. So it's hard. That's still a mystery.
And maybe something that you've sort of gone over a million times in your mind, all the different scenarios. It's going to be tough.
Trust me, I've gone over every scenario at least 50 times each. I've had a lot of time to go over the scenarios.
Well, Julie, I want to thank you for coming on to help clarify some of the things in Maura's case, to try and get the most accurate information out there and clear up things that are not accurate. And I appreciate you coming on to give us a family's insider view to help us do that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Definitely, I jump at this opportunity, and I'm thankful that people are still talking about Maura.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, please contact the appropriate authorities.
If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will help us grow and bring these cases to a larger audience. You can also help us by taking a moment to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get early or ad-free access to episodes of the show and any bonus content.
Your Patreon support also goes towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with charlieproject.org, the wonderful website that's been sharing information about so many missing persons cases for years. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder that new episodes of Missing Persons air every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, we're on Facebook at facebook.com/missingpersonspod. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can find us and contact us through our website, missingpersonspodcast.com. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Aetna has over 1.6 million care providers, so whether you need a urologist, dermatologist, or otolaryngologist, our team's got you covered. Because healthier happens together. For all your healthcare moments, choose Aetna. Learn more at aetna.com/moments.
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, whenever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members only pay a $25 copay or less. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off of your first month when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Talkspace.com.
Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed at home with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 2 million families who've chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.